Hi, I'm Penny, I'm a copywriter, and today I'm going to show you how you can move away from the endless, super generic landfill content that fills our feeds and our screens every day and use our words to build deeper, more powerful connections with the people who are going to come to our events. So I think as a consumer, we've all had those instances where you've landed on a website or a social post or an ad or whatever it is, and it feels like that person is in your head. It's direct to brain. It's like you feel completely seen, and all the kind of marketing, business, salesy bullshit just falls away, and you are left with a human talking to a human. That stuff is gold. So what's going on when that happens? Let's take a quick look. So writing like this creates connection. That's the very first thing. But once you've got that connection, you start to build a relationship of trust with your audience. Once you've got their trust, they'll listen to what they've got to say. You've got their attention. And once you've got their attention and they're listening, they are so much more likely to act. Now, getting to the point of writing like this might feel like a distant dream if you're not like a super skilled copywriter or you've got an ad agency behind you with like mega bucks. But there are things that everyone can do to get closer to that magical connection. And today I'm going to give you 4 of those things and 4 ways you can do it too. Now, I will caveat this by saying, of course, writing is a craft, it takes time, and time might not be something that you have a lot of as an event marketer. You're probably working on tight turnarounds, multi-channel campaigns, loads going on, lots of deadlines. So I'm going to try and give you things that you can implement to change your mindset nice and quickly. However, let it be said, there are no shortcuts to having a really clear grasp of your brand voice, understanding your audience, and understanding the transformational value that your event could have for them. So when I say that, what I mean is it's your USP, your secret sauce, the thing that your event is going to do that the other events aren't. Once you know those things, inside out and upside down, you've created a really strong foundation, and you've got a much better chance of breaking down that fourth wall and creating really human connections with your copy. So without further ado, let's move on to the first tip. Okay, so first tip, empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. I'm sure we've all been given those like audience personas with dry demographic information like age, job, shoe size, car you drive. Basic information like this, it's useful, but it's not always that helpful when we're trying to talk to someone really on their level. So we need to move beyond that really dry information, from demographics to psychographics. Really dig into what their hopes are and their fears and their dreams. And sometimes, like, actually, if you have the time to develop those archetypes for yourself, it can be a really helpful insight into getting into your audience's brain. So here are some examples of some questions you could maybe ask of your audience to really get to grips with what they want. So say, for example, you're promoting an expo for startups and you're trying to attract early stage founders. So one of the things that will really draw them in is knowing that there are going to be investors present at the event, right? So brilliant, put that in your promotions, tick, job done. However, if we dig a little bit deeper and think about what people will really be worrying about, you might start to realize that, being in a room full of hundreds of other early stage founders who are all competing to speak to those investors might feel quite daunting for most people, I would say. So, okay, what can you do to really reassure those people that they're going to get their chance to speak? Like, are you doing one-to-one slots? Is there some other kind of facility where you can book some time in with investors or exchange details and speak to them at a later date to allay some of those fears? I mean, if you can do that, that's going to move them so much further on in their sales journey and closer to hitting that button. Tip number 2, lead with emotion. So our rational brain might tell us that statistics should be more persuasive than anecdotal writing, but research shows us time and time again that this is simply not true. We're human beings, we are emotional creatures, and we make decisions based on emotional information. So let's have a look at an example here and see which one you find the most persuasive. So we've got a little dry information-led one over on the left, which has just got some basic information. And how differently do you feel when you read the one on the right? it kind of jumps off the screen a bit more, right? Yeah, okay, it's a little bit cheesy, but it's got our attention. So I would always say include stats to back up your stuff if you need to, but make sure your hook is something that moves somebody first. Tip number 3 is tell a story. As humans, we're programmed to listen more closely to stories. It's hardwired in us. We just get sucked in. We want to know what happens. But we often get told to use stories in our writing, right? But we don't always get told how we can do that. So I think it's always important to remember that stories are all about change. So stories need to have a challenge that's overcome or a journey that someone goes on to kind of learn something about themselves. So really what you want to try and imagine is gathering your audience around the campfire and telling them the stories of your event. So that could be experiences that past attendees have had and successes, stories about your exhibitors, why they're so passionate about what they do, or it could be the story of the event itself, like putting it on behind the scenes, what's happened in the sense of it all coming together. If you can tell those stories simply and clearly, then just watch your audience get sucked in and they'll come away feeling invested and inspired and much more likely to come along. So our 4th and final tip is make it a conversation. Remember who you're writing to and try and write it for them and them alone if you can. You can use personalization to help with this if it's available. Try and write for one person and not the person who's signing it off and not your high school English teacher. Forget about all those devils on your shoulder. Focus on that one customer who is short on time, running out of fucks to give. Talk to them, make it really relevant and engaging. So an exercise I really love for this is to imagine you're sitting opposite them in a pub or a cafe or wherever they're most likely to hang out. So what would you tell them about your event? What would you focus on to draw them in? Forget you're even writing. Think about what you'd say, how you'd say it, like what information will tantalize them and make them lean in closer. What will your event do for them that will move them further away from their fears and closer to their dreams? Remember, nobody gives a shit about your event unless you tell them what's in it for them, and you've got seconds to convince your reader that they're in the right place and this message is for them. So just always imagine like your customer's a little devil on your shoulder saying, what's in it for me? You know, why should I come? So those are my 4 tips from today. Even if you've taken away one little tool or technique, it will improve your writing. Here's a little checklist that you can use to keep yourself in check. And I'm just going to give you one final tip before I go. These are all before and during kind of mindset tips. So here's a after you've written, super, super practical one just to end on. And it is just to read your words out loud. In the office, wherever you are, just stand up and say it, because copy that really truly flows to read is also a dream to read aloud. If it doesn't flow, back to the drawing board you go. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and good luck with writing copy that makes your customers feel seen and want to leap into action. We all know that AI is getting its claws in. It's kind of inevitable. And when and as it does, this type of writing will become absolute gold standard for cut through and customer engagement. So it's really time to get on board. And yeah, here's my little QR code if you want to connect over on the old LinkedIn. Let's go. Thank you.